Number 10. Animated Scraptrap. Not even an animated or cartoon version of Scraptrap can redeem Scraptrap's overall horrific image. Even when you try to make Scraptrap cute, he remains one of the most terrifying animatronics around. This version of Scraptrap and Springtrap is sometimes made to look a little less monstrous, given a shorter stature, is made cuter, and given less malicious expressions. But then there is still a very evident dark side that shines through. I mean, just look at this grin here. Springtrap, even when animated, is still always up to something, and should basically never be trusted. Nor should Scraptrap. Number 9. Electric Scraptrap. Electric Scraptrap just sounds like a horrifying idea. Any animatronic just sounds awful, to be honest, because if the animatronics were electric, they could then harm you at range, and being near them wouldn't just mean you'd get jump scared, but also mean you could get shocked to death. Or possibly, I suppose, shocked to life? If you suffered a heart attack from the jump scare, actually maybe the electric shock would restart your heart. Wait, but then you'd be stuck in an endless loop of death, with the animatronics jump scaring you and then reviving you on repeat, possibly forever. So never mind, still not so great, and pretty scary overall. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more fan alternate FNAF lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Every time you thumbs up a video, a new fan alternate comes into being. Some fan somewhere is like, I gotta draw this idea.
And it ain't bribery. The fact that William wasn't caught, or that everything seems to go so perfectly for him, has to have an explanation. It's not like this guy just got that lucky. No way, not in Five Nights at Freddy's. There has to be a reason behind why the cops didn't check inside the bleeding and horrifically smelling animatronics. We know that this is the case because the newspapers from FNAF 1 confirm that the restaurants shut down thanks to animatronics smelling like death and leaking mucus and blood. Here's a quote from one of those clippings. Police were contacted when parents reportedly noticed what appeared to be blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the mascots. One parent likened them to reanimated carcasses. How were the bodies not found then? They could have tested the blood, found that it was similar to the parents if they didn't have any of the kids' DNA on file, and then easily have gotten a warrant to take the animatronics. But they didn't. The dead bodies were still never found and Afton was released. How the actual hell is that possible? The only way I can see, personally, is bribery. Like, William had to have been bribing these people, and they had to know that he was locked in the back room of Fazbear Frights, because why would they tear down a random wall to find that animatronic? It's impossible. There's no way that he just got released out of random chance. No one is that lucky. No. And at 7, the arm. We don't know too much about the upcoming FNAF game Security Breach. So far we know that there are at least 5 new animatronics and a whole pizzaplex to explore, and the game will have a day and night cycle, but that Afton will also somehow be involved thanks to the appearance of Vanny, who will serve as the antagonist to this game. However, in the gameplay trailer released for the game by PlayStation, at the very end we see a seemingly metallic arm reach out from behind some boxes. Some believe this to be the arm of the Stitch Wraith, others think that this is William. I think it's the latter, since, you know, we can see the reflection of purple light coming off the arm. And and Springtrap, aka good ol' Willie Afton, is known for being the purple guy. This, combined with the fact that he's trying to escape the game, indicates that he will in fact be successful. And his goal of achieving eternal or everlasting life will be complete, since now he exists as code, and can, I'm guessing, jump from animatronic to animatronic. And that's probably going to end up being a feature in the game after Security Breach, if there is one. And at 6, Glitchtrap. Glitchtrap is very clearly meant to be William Afton in his code form. As Tape Girl says, he was created after they scanned a hard drive they were given that was meant to help with coding the AI for the animatronics. However, while this is evidently William, it's theorized by many that this is meant to be based on the original suit that Afton wore to lure kids away, or at least try to, since thanks to the newly released Faz Facts, which I covered in detail in another video, link is in the iCard, we now know that the first animatronics William built, or at least some of the first, had claws that could hide away items, which is a feature only present in the Funtime animatronics. So the Funtimes were built before the spring-lock suits used in Fredbear's Family Diner, at least they could be. So this would have to have been a suit used at the company before they even had animatronics. And he was also planning on going on a killing spree already, so we can always assume the worst. Maybe there are more kids that went missing out of their homes like suggested in the Midnight Motorist minigame. Who knows? Halfway through it at number 5, Survivor. The issue of how William was surviving so much was really on everyone's mind. He made it through being spring-locked, he survived 2 fires, he was really somehow the most iron-willed individual in the series, and we have no idea why. Or at least, we had no idea why. The main theory was that William had injected himself with Remnant, which is the molten form of metal possessed by a soul, which would have been the original 5 animatronics. This idea, from what I can tell, came from the books, since the novel version of William becomes incredibly obsessed with Remnant and trying to use it to grant himself everlasting life, like some weird kind of soul vampire, also known as a ginger. This seemed like a solid idea though, and explained away many of the random things he got through, but had one crucial flaw. The only way to destroy Remnant is with a fire, so he would have had to make it out of the FNAF 3 fire unscathed, which, as we saw in Sister Location's ending, he didn't, since he was literally at the burnt down Fazbear Fright. Does anyone else find it slightly annoying that Fazbear Fright is both the name of the FNAF 3 location and the series of books revolving around like the short stories? Because I certainly do. It's very annoying. And at 4, Mic Trap. The Mic Trap theory came out after Sister Location's secret ending, where Michael makes his speech with the famous line of "I'm going to come find you." After saying "I'm going to come find you" a second time, Springtrap appears at the burnt down Fazbear Fright. This one little moment caused some fans to assume that Springtrap appearing meant that it was Springtrap who was talking, making them think that Mike was in fact the one in the Springtrap suit. Hence the name Mic Trap. This, however, was simply to illustrate that Springtrap survived the fire, like we had been assuming, since Scott said in a Reddit or Steam post to check out MatPat's conclusion on this debate, and MatPat had concluded that it was William in the Springtrap suit. Since in FNAF 2's minigames he was able to drive, and if he was Michael, we couldn't have been him in Sister Location. It wouldn't make sense. But that wouldn't be the end of the Mic Trap debate. Haha, just wait until the next game comes out. Getting close to the end into number 3, Survived. After FNAF 3's ending, when we learned about the fire, we thought that that was it, at least for around 20 seconds, until people started brightening the final image like we know to do with FNAF by now. And that's when we saw Springtrap sitting in the shadows behind the stuffed animal that was the image for the news article about the fire. Now, I have no idea how the photographer didn't see that, or if William was bribing news outlets or whatever, but this is absolutely terrifying. And it really is what started us down the rabbit hole of having to jump through several hoops to find more lore clues and ideas. Brightening this one image made us have to comb through the files of a mobile game. Think about that. Anyway, this image set us on the path to thinking William survived the fire and that this would not be the last FNAF game. I don't know if this was supposed to be the point of the Easter egg, like if it was somehow to allow for more games in this series if Scott wanted to, but hey, either way, it happened. And here we are, 5 games, 15 books, and more later. Still questioning everything about this series, so time well spent.
Number 2, Ignited Springtrap. All that remains seemingly of this version of Springtrap is his skeleton. Ignited Springtrap seems almost chalky when it comes to his look, being that he is mostly just bits of burnt flesh and suit and exposed brittle bones. The one plus about this scary fan-made version, if you had to face it, is that you would probably find it pretty easy to defeat because it's just a walking skeleton, which means it probably wouldn't be that strong as it has no muscles left. At least that's how I always imagine fighting skeletons in real life, but then again, being just bones means that you're likely harder to hit with a ranged attack as you have less mass, so I guess there are pros and cons to taking on skeletal enemies like Ignited Springtrap. Number 1, Scorched Scraptrap / Springtrap. Yeah, there are lots of different versions that like to reimagine Springtrap or Scraptrap as being pretty heavily burnt. Scorched Scraptrap is no exception. This fan-made fire-based version of the animatronic, however, I think is one of the scariest. Why? Because it reimagines the animatronic as something that is a little less human-like in appearance to me. One fan-made version shows the scorched version in half shadow, obstructing its facial features from clear view, and making it appear more ominous. Other versions imagine Scorched Scraptrap as resembling the burned-up ghost version that haunted us in FNAF 3 at the Fazbear's Fright attraction. Because obviously, at that time, Springtrap was around and was alive, so not a ghost. Just a corpse in a suit.
In at 10, William Afton. Before Sister Location's release, we could only speculate as to the name of the individual we knew as Springtrap. Tons of names were made. Dave, Dylan, Trent, Kyle, Steven, you name it, and someone had claimed that this was Springtrap's name. However, the introduction of Springtrap's true identity, William Afton, was actually in the FNAF novels, more particularly The Silver Eyes, the first novel in the series. This was mostly shown to the masses by Matt Pat and his theory on the subject, but the response was actually practically divided, with a load of people glad that we finally at least had some form of canon name for the character, and others upset because Matt Pat had used the books for his theory, which don't share the same continuity as the games, despite sharing the same canon of Five Nights at Freddy's. This theory, however, was ultimately confirmed to be true during Sister Location's starting scene, where we first hear Afton speak, talking about Baby's various features.
There's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state-of-the-art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those.
She can dance. She can sing. She's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips. She can take song requests. She can even dispense ice cream.
With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton.
And at 9, Eternal Torment. Ultimate Custom Night was a really interesting turning point in the FNAF series. The original Afton storyline was finally at a close, and this game was the ultimate capstone to that, with some important lore hints in the form of voiced lines that play when you get killed. However, this game still fits into the FNAF story, and serves as a link between the original story and the new one, the new story being Afton trying to escape the video game world that he got himself locked in. But we originally interpreted this game all wrong, since we initially thought that William was burning in hell, or at least stuck in purgatory. But as all Supernatural fans know, purgatory is just a giant forest where monsters kill each other for all eternity, not a security guard office where you have to fight off countless animatronics. But this idea, despite being solid with incredible amounts of evidence, was proven wrong thanks to the original final book in the Fazbear Fright series called Bunny Call. Wow, Scott really likes to act like he's ending things with Springtrap and then just totally doesn't. However, in this book, the story of the man in room 1280 tells the true tale of what's going on in this game. Afton is in the hospital, horrifically burned after the FNAF 6 fire, and is stuck in a coma, much like Crying Child was in FNAF 4. Eventually he wakes up though, which I'm guessing is him beating 50/20 mode, and is brought to a Fazbear warehouse where he promptly explodes and possesses a hard drive. Fun.
Number 8. Fixed Springtrap / Scraptrap. Fixed Scraptrap doesn't sound scary at first, and then you see what some fans have done with this design. The eyes for many versions that I've looked at is what makes this fan-made alternate so unsettling for me. The fact that everything on this animatronic looks put together and almost brand new, save for the fact that you can still kind of tell there is someone in the suit, and someone who might not be doing well, and is likely still dead. The contrast of that clean suit with those manic eyes is pretty much what haunts me here. Something very unhinged about this version. Number 7. Expectation Scraptrap. This is a design that was shared with the idea in mind of what Springtrap should or could look like once he became Scraptrap. It was shared on Reddit and shows Scraptrap reimagined as being patched up with various different parts and bits from other animatronics, fully formed as opposed to being quite so tattered and broken. Well, still tattered I suppose, but just with less pieces missing overall, just also a little more put together looking in my opinion. Expectation Scraptrap to me is a lot more colorful, which reduces some of the scare factor, but this version of Scraptrap is also more functional, which is pretty scary. And I think it makes sense that Scraptrap would patch themselves up with like actual animatronic pieces that we might recognize, considering whose corpse is also inside here, and therefore who the pilot behind that animatronic really is. You'd think you see some reflection with, like, you know, maybe some other animatronic pieces that we've seen before, that this person may have also made, you know what I mean? Number 6. Peekaboo Scraptrap. I like to call this one Peekaboo Scraptrap just for the way this redesign looks. The main difference between this version of the character and the original one from the games is that we can more easily see William Afton's head here, or what's left of it at least. The new head on this version has the original animatronic head sitting more back and up, as though the top of the head was pulled up and away from the bottom half, the jaw. The top part of the animatronic head kind of rests on top of well, I guess whatever is left of William Afton's head inside the suit, kind of like when you put sunglasses on top of your head for easy access and safekeeping when you no longer want to be wearing them on your face. The result is a very eerie face that we get to see, still shrouded in darkness, peering out at us from inside the gaping hole where the animatronic's mouth is open wide. This specific fan-made redesign that I'm talking about here was shared by Atlas Zodiac on Reddit. You should check it out because it's pretty creepy and pretty great. Number 5. Springtrap After the Fire. This fan-made alternate version allows one to imagine what it would be like to gaze upon Springtrap after he's already been melted by the flames and forever altered. Mostly he looks kind of distorted and goopy here. Overall, just not pleasant to gaze upon or spy lurking in the shadows behind you. Springtrap After the Fire often has more organs exposed, or in some cases has no outer suit left at all. Some fan-made takes on this version also show that the corpse beneath has lost its eyes, with them supposedly melting away in the flames, while other versions show the eyes as somewhat malformed due to the heat, becoming somehow, I guess, partially melted. Alternatively, one fan reimagined this version of Springtrap as just a pile of ashes with eyes and an arm sticking out. Seems pretty accurate. Number 4. Burned Scraptrap. Typically the burned Scraptrap fan-made version reveals to us a version of this animatronic who has less limbs and less of a suit left. The skeleton beneath the corpses and organs is revealed in some parts, prominently the skull. One take has the entire upper head of the suit missing, with little stumps of wire where the ears would be. Imagine being burnt in a suit with metal ears on it. It would not be pleasant at all. And it would probably be very hot on your head as that metal started to heat up. I'm like imagining what it would be like and it's already like just painful to me. I'm surprised we don't see more burned versions of Scraptrap with melted brains actually oozing out of the nose holes. Going into a fire, it seems like a goopy or boiled brain would be a very real reality. Number 3. Hellfire Scraptrap. Possibly one of the scariest alternate versions of Scraptrap around when it comes to fan-made versions. This version of the killer animatronic possesses an even sharper bone shank and looks like it's partially melted, with the outer part of the suit looking like it has melded or completely melted with the corpse of William Afton beneath it. Basically, this version of Scraptrap looks like it has returned from hell after being placed into its otherworldly blazing fires, which could very well be the story of what happened in this scenario, just based on the fan-made animatronic's appearance. This version of Scraptrap also only seems to have one eye left remaining. One eye left. The depth perception must be really not great for that version of Scraptrap.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Spring vs. Scrap. Then Ultimate Custom Night came out, and the Mike vs. Wooltrap debate was on the rise again, thanks to the introduction of Scraptrap, who people thought was Scott adding a new character so that both Afton men could be Springlock victims. This was incredibly frustrating for me, but it was ironed out when Scott referred everyone to Mapat's conclusion on the debate, like I said before, cause you know. And in Ultimate Custom Night, Scraptrap says, "I always come back," which turns into William's signature line because let's be honest, he does always come back. So that seemingly settled it, but there are for some reason still fans who believe that Springtrap and or Scraptrap is still Michael, which just boggles my mind. But when people are dead set on something, you can't really convince them otherwise, just like how you can't convince me that Mike isn't a robot, even though in this debate there is confirmation that Spring and Scraptrap are William, but hey. Finally, in at number 1, Survive x2. William surviving the FNAF 6 fire though was much harder to believe when it came out at first, at least before Bunny Call was released. However, some fans seem to note that during the final cutscene of FNAF 6 during Henry's speech, while the other animatronics were engulfed by flames, Scraptrap was ahead of them.
There's more waiting for you after the smoke clears. Although for one of you, the darkest pit of hell has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the devil waiting, old friend.
This was especially hard to believe given that we thought Ultimate Custom Night took place in hell, which is really impossible to go to unless you die. Well, with me being the exception. I party with Satan on the regular. He strangely can't hold his liquor. Either way, this was all proven to be true when Bunny Call was released and William was in the hospital in room 1280, which I have to say has got to be one of the biggest trolls in the entire series, or like at least like one of them. Because like, come on Scott, really? You had to do that to me? To us? Yeah, thank you, Scott. Into 10, Dreadful Dancing. The end of the main game of FNAF VR has us getting stuffed into the Freddy animatronic on stage by Glitchtrap and singing a song while he dances in the dining area where we make all of our decisions, you know, where we choose what games we want, etc. However, the question is, why is he dancing? At this point, this man has done nothing to escape the game, yet, like, he's still trapped in it, and he isn't really able to get out as of yet, so why is this happening? Is it because he's killing again, or was just able to stuff someone in a suit again, which seems to be his kind of kink? Which I mean, like, I'm definitely going to be kink shaming that, because like, while you can be into whatever you're into, okay, I think that saying reaches its limit when you're actually harming other people, just saying. However, his dancing is very weird and became a meme in and of itself, but there still doesn't really seem to be a solid purpose behind it. And at 9, Curse of Dreadful dancing. The same remains true in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC for Help Wanted, whereby turning the game into blacklight mode, which was only added for this Easter egg given that the DLC has no hard mode levels, turn around and look at the car for around 10 to 15 seconds, which some people believe is a reference to the Midnight Motorist minigame, since after looking at the car you can turn around and see Glitchtrap dancing by a house on a hill similar to how we see FNAF 4's house. He isn't on the same hill, but it seems to indicate that there's a connection between him, a car, and a house. Sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's what we were all thinking was going on in Midnight Motorist in FNAF 6. More on that in a minute. But even when you do this Easter egg, he never gets any closer. He just stays dancing on that hill, which is even more confusing because, like, well, why? The only other time we've seen him dance like that was when he stuffed us in the main game, so why is he dancing like it again? And this can happen whether he's possessed you or not, which makes me think that this may not be the Glitchtrap we know after all. And at 8, Midnight Motorist. As I said, we seem to have confirmation that Glitchtrap, aka William Afton, was the one in the Midnight Motorist car based on that Easter egg, right? Well, what if I told you that there was another explanation? That would also explain the dancing. Yeah, you heard that right. All of this may actually be indicating something entirely different from Midnight Motorist. You see, when Glitchtrap was introduced, we thought that he might have been the animatronic, or I guess the person, who came to get Mustard Man's son out of his room since there was footprints with 3 toes. However, most animatronics have 3 toes, so that wasn't much to go on. But now we have some. Since looking at a car and then a house is very clearly meant to be a Midnight Motorist reference, Glitchtrap is on a hill separate to the house, as if he isn't connected directly. And, well, he's dancing. And the only other time we've seen him dance is when he had just killed us at the end of the Pizza Party minigame. So, was the Midnight Motorist minigame just William's second victim, hence the dancing on the hill? Did he take Mustard Man's son after killing Charlotte? Let me know your thoughts down below. And at 7, Bonnie. This is an interesting theory from Reddit user u/was that the bite of 87 on the Game Theorist subreddit a month ago, which actually Matt Pat just talked about in his last Game Theory on Sunday. The post didn't get much love, but it's certainly interesting. Was that the bite of _87 asks if the Burn Trap animatronic is using the disassembled Bonnie. Quote from the Reddit post. So, I have a theory that Burn Trap is using the disassembled Bonnie robot. Let me explain. So you know how Burn Trap has an intact animatronic foot even though no other Springtrap or Scraptrap never had them? Management might have disassembled Bonnie, and there could have been a body of Glitchtrap infected person in there, which explains the dead rotting corpse, and Afton could have taken over, but is weak, which explains why he needs a recharge station. That is all I have for now. It's kind of rough, but considering how Afton's body is still in that robot, which wouldn't be necessary if his consciousness is only in Glitchtrap or if it was transferred into this endo, I don't think that this is actually like the canon. Like I think that if Afton's body wasn't in the robot, you'd be onto something, and like Matt Pat would also be onto something because he also agrees that this should be Glam Rock Bonnie's endo. But his body being in there has to be Scraptrap, but like heavily burnt. Like sure, he has another arm, but they could have just added an arm onto him. But like the main body of it would have to be Scraptrap, unless we have like a really messed up scenario going on, which is possible, but it's a kid's game, so I don't know. I mean, like, would Vanny take Afton's rotting corpse and put it in a new endo? I don't think so. I personally don't think so. I think that they just replaced the arms and the legs so that he could stand, because he didn't have his actual human feet anymore. That's just what I think. And at 6, AI. It is unknown how Glitchtrap was able to leave his body for the events of FNAF VR, or how he re-enters it for the events of Security Breach. Based on everything we know about the series, it should be impossible for Glitchtrap to exist if Afton is still inside Burn Trap, especially if the one you should not have killed is keeping him alive still, since that would prevent Afton from escaping from his body. And despite a line of dialogue in the trailer clearly coming from some sort of William Afton, Burn Trap never speaks throughout his entire encounter, which only makes this more confusing, since if he talked, we would know that he isn't an AI, but he doesn't talk, so we can't be sure if he is or not, since not talking doesn't exactly mean that he's an AI, since people can also choose not to talk. And the AIs in this game also talk, so at this point, we have no idea if he is or isn't an AI, which is really annoying. Although, I still believe that the one you should not have killed is Gregory, not Cassidy, but you know, well, MatPat doesn't want to talk about it. He won't respond to my Twitter, okay? Or my Instagram. Or literally anything at this point. MatPat, please. Let's talk about this. Halfway through into number 5, Ultimate Custom Night. I think we all know where William Afton he deserves to go, okay? One-way trip downstairs, or as Henry said, although for one of you, the darkest pit in hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. I'm still waiting, Afton. And you know what? We thought we had gotten rid of him. We thought that William was in hell for Ultimate Custom Night, however, this proves to not be the case when the Man Room 1280 was released, showing us that instead William had only been in a coma like his son years before. However, this time winning was him waking up instead of dying, only dying when he explodes in the Fazbear warehouse and creates Glitchtrap, but apparently, this is no longer what happened. Because, did William really possess a hard drive and become sentient code, or is there something more going on here? While yes, weird things in the series can be explained away with it's FNAF, or like a dream theory of something, but like, no, I'm not doing that, okay? That's the coward's way out, and I'm not a coward, for the most part. Although, I don't want to play horror games. But like, just look, if Afton is in Burn Trap, he shouldn't be able to be Glitchtrap. The Ultimate Custom Night is just Burn Trap being in the pod. It's what he's seeing when he's in the pod. So everything we thought we knew about Ultimate Custom Night doesn't count anymore. And that's hella annoying because, you know what? We thought we had something. We thought that we had finally figured out one thing about this series. Then you know what Scott says? Up yours! And at 4, survivors. It seems like everyone we see in the true ending to Security Breach, including Burn Trap, are survivors of the FNAF 6 fire, which means that this would indeed be Scraptrap or Springtrap, but as to how he changed again, I have no idea. How do we know that this is everyone from FNAF 6 and not just William? Well, the Blob, which is a massive sized proportion of wire tentacles, because of course it is, and animatronic parts with possession of many glowing eyes. It has a whole load of them, okay? It has a mask that is identical to that of Funtime Freddy with black eyes, pinkish red glowing pupils, and like the endo face that reveals to have face plates rather than tubes, which is already a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. The Blob's body is a large mass of wire like tentacles, and like it's basically what the sister location endos were made out of. However, it also appears to be a larger version of Molten Freddy from the Pizza Simulator Fire. Okay, but it's far bigger, and it has parts of other animatronics like Circus Baby, the Puppet, Chica for some reason, Mangle, Bonnie, and several Endo Mark IIs. And you know what? There's probably others, which again is a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, the one you didn't mean to kill. I still personally believe that Crying Child is the one you should not have killed. It just makes more sense and explains a lot more. And you know, FNAF VR may be providing us some evidence in that direction. Many fans noted the shocking absence of one of the series' most popular characters, Golden Freddy, not appearing once in the game. Not even in parts and service, which is odd given the amount of maintenance that character would need. But there is an appearance of Crying Child, or at least his VR equivalent, given that his room is there along with the nightmare animatronics which only appeared in his mind. So, this proves to us that Golden Freddy and Crying Child are 2 separate entities, and thus Crying Child is not possessing Golden Freddy, as long as you look at it in the right way and are actually not like trying to look for anything or literally anything to counter me. Like when your parent comes into your room to check your cleaning and then starts checking the most ungodly places that you would never think to clean, like inside your TV or under your mattress. Yeah. That's what you're doing by trying to counter that. This separation of characters proves that Crying Child is not inside Golden Freddy, and if that is the case, where did he go when he dies in the hospital with no animatronics around and only his father? Boom, right into Glitchtrap. Okay, well, not Glitchtrap per se, but William, who just so happens to also be Glitchtrap. You know what I mean. Penultimately, and at number 2, single and ready to mingle. Glitchtrap from the looks of things can only possess one individual, which I know goes against Matt Pat, so a load of you are already commenting how stupid I am, but hear me out. I discussed this in my We Are Vanny Theory video, so if you want that more in context, go watch that. However, I don't think Glitchtrap can possess multiple people, and I think that Help Wanted has been telling us this from the get-go and we never noticed. During the final showdown, if you actually follow Tape Girl's instructions properly, you end up locking yourself in your own mind. And then that Glitchtrap manifestation that was to our right just somehow turns into a green rabbit plush that just sits on the ground where he used to stand. This moment indicates that now we're actually possessed. If we don't follow the instructions, we end up merging with him on stage, but yeah, that's on stage in the game. That's why we don't see our character's hands and goggles looking at our station. That isn't in the real world. Yet, if you're focused on trying to do the complicated process of actually pressing the buttons and flipping the levers, your mind is vulnerable. You aren't fighting off Glitchtrap, and instead you're trying to do things in the right order, which ends up giving Glitchtrap a perfect path into your psyche, thus being able to lock you in your own mind. Once Glitchtrap actually gets to your mind though, we can see that he can no longer actually manifest in the game, and is replaced by something so that the game doesn't shatter into a million pieces, because the code would still need to be there. Glitchtrap cannot be in 2 places at once, therefore he cannot possess multiple people at once. Boom. Finally, and at number 1, Freddy and Friends. The Freddy and Friends on Tour series has 2 episodes now and seems to be released weekly on the Steelwool Studios YouTube channel. However, there's something seemingly wrong with them, as they keep glitching to reveal characters from Security Breach and, most notably, the Stitch Wraith, as well as Moondrop and their Sun Variation. However, what if there is more of a reason for these glitches lore-wise than just some fun teasers that are, in essence, the Back to the Future movies? And I say this because it's the same characters doing the same thing over and over, just with a different setting, and maybe 2 other things that change, but I mean, I still love the Back to the Future movies. But what if Glitchtrap somehow made his way into the show? This wouldn't be anything new. Story taking place outside the games happens quite frequently in this series. Take Baby having a fight with Ennard, for example. That happens between games in the source code for ScottGames.com. So, with William making an effort to make his way into an animatronic body, what if these clips are him working on that? After all, they are glitches, and just because they're coming out before Security Breach doesn't mean they take place before it. Take FNAF 2, which is a prequel for FNAF 1. These things don't have to appear in order. Therefore, these could very well be after we save Vanny or after William no longer has use for her and went back to possessing technology so that he could take over the Stitch Wraith's endoskeleton at the end of Security Breach. In a 10 Nightmare arm. The arm at the end of the initial Security Breach teaser drove the internet mad for a week before we ultimately just said we'll wait for the next trailer. And with the most recent, which was the last trailer before the game's release, we still had nothing about that arm. And I guess I can understand why, but it was still frustrating. So you can guess that when someone tagged me on Twitter at Centimeter Monroe and showed me a picture comparing the Security Breach arm to the arm of Nightmare Freddy, I'd be intrigued. So intrigued, in fact, that I actually got angry, because if it's ever intended on being a Nightmare Freddy arm, I'm leaving, okay? These animatronics are perfectly content being illusions, okay? Or in a child's imagination running wild while his body is trying to save his life, but still, what the hell? How do these versions of Afton in an animatronic keep changing? They all have his body in it, so they must be intentionally the same endo, but then it keeps changing designs still. And a 9 Stitch Wraith. Seeing the Stitch Wraith was very unlikely, but I would have certainly enjoyed an appearance of the character, even if it was in a nightmare sequence like I had suggested in other videos, or maybe it was a brief passerby. I mean, it's not impossible, but I do think that that one wasn't likely to happen. Even in a future DLC, I don't think it would happen. But it would certainly be interesting to be looking out a window or something in the Pizzaplex, although there's not really any windows, but it would still be interesting to see him out of the corner of our eye. However, we did used to believe that the Afton arm was in fact the Stitch Wraith, and some fans believe that Burntrap will actually turn into the game universe's version of the Stitch Wraith, which wouldn't rely on Phineas tag art and would probably work better for the story of the games, but I don't know. Based on everything we've seen, I don't think that William will be losing his face anytime soon. But what do you think? Do you think that William, or I guess Burntrap, will end up being the Stitch Wraith of the FNAF game universe, or do you think that we'll never see the Stitch Wraith in the games? Be sure to let me know down below. And at 8, not Afton. Some thoroughly believe that this animatronic, this new version of the Spring Bonnie animatronic, to not be William, and instead possibly be Henry Emily, William's business partner and father of his first victim. Why do they think this? No idea. However, I can kind of see why. But simply, it's just due to inconsistencies. Since seemingly the endo for this version of Scraptrap also has the same endo as the Glamrock animatronics, or the ones that we see in what is honestly the scariest part of the game. Those are the only real endos that we see. Since if this was Afton, the endo should be the first version of the endoskeleton. My explanation for this is simply because they had this model for the endo in the files and they were rushing to release something after already delaying the game multiple times. So they used it and added the Scraptrap bits onto it. And since he's so destroyed, it's really difficult to determine whether it's the same design as Scraptrap. And since Henry was also in the FNAF 6 location, it could be him technically, or at least he was around the location, but I still doubt it. And it's 7 corrupted code. I've said multiple times that if Glitchtrap was actually never meant to be in the game, that he wouldn't be able to do the things he does, like moving curtains and whatnot. However, there is another possibility that is just as viable. Did William take control of Glitchtrap? You see, there are technically 2 versions of Glitchtrap present within the game. The one in a full suit that is solid that we see when we're in the Pizza Party minigame and then when he attacks us after collecting all 16 tapes. But the thing is, even if you don't collect a single tape and play through the whole game, that Pizza Party minigame Glitchtrap will still be there fully formed. However, if you collect most of the tapes and don't fully reassemble Glitchtrap, the form you see to the right of you is like a hologram, like how we would assume a sentient code ghost would look like, I guess. So what if instead of creating the Glitchtrap character from scratch, William simply corrupted the character with himself, or even made a copy of the character that Tape Girl then had to stow away using the tapes? I don't know how many people are talking about this, but it seems like there's something there. And at 6, Steelwool Studios. Could the situation of Glitchtrap, or rather I guess FNAF VR in general, just be a representation of Steelwool Studios? I mean, the story that we're told in Help Wanted of an indie game developer making games about tragedies that took situations that happened in a children's pizzeria that ruined their reputation seems to be what happened in real life, with Scott making the FNAF games, potentially based on a string of real life killings, and bringing down the Chuck E. Cheese business, at least from what we can assume, considering how they really went out of business in some states because of COVID. However, there were some false articles about 5 children going missing and night guards dying on the job that went viral on Twitter for a hot minute that resulted in plenty of people believing them to be true. Plus, a lot of fans from what I'm seeing in the comments would rather go to a Freddy Fazbear's instead of Chuck E. Cheese, even though Chuck E. Cheese is real. Even so much as refusing to go to Chuck E. Cheese because it isn't FNAF. So that leaves the question, is this game meant to represent real life? And if so, who does Glitchtrap represent? The killer that Afton is based on? The CEO of Steelwool who is pushing for security breach to be bigger, thus resulting in delays? Or is he us? Halfway through into number 5, Ideal Form. With Glitchtrap being explained to us as a manifestation that was created after scanning hard drives, we can reasonably assume that William created this body, even if other possibilities are more likely. But if he did make this body, does that mean that it's his ideal form? Not having to worry about spring locks since that didn't end too well the last time, nobody knowing who he truly is, but still in that classic golden Bonnie suit. Well, if this is the case, what does he look like under the suit? Is he still burnt, or is he healed? When pyromaniacs or other people who have been driven mad by fire are showcased in movies, TV, or documentaries, they always say that the fire cleansed them or showed them their true path somehow, and that their burns are their form of baptism. But does William feel the same? I mean, this guy survived 2 fires at least and was still kicking after being taken off life support, so I mean he has to be at least a little superstitious about that, right? Or, I guess, just suspicious. Either way, I just want to know if this is what his ideal form is, and if it is, how am I supposed to compete with these unrealistic male body standards? And at 4, Rituals. This comes from my personal collection of theories that I haven't really talked about because they have since been proven, or basically proven wrong. We now know that William was trying to escape the game through possessing someone. However, when the game originally came out, I thought something different. That William was in fact trying to escape by killing one person, sharing a name with each of his original 5 or 6 victims. Susie, Jeremy, Fritz, Gabriel, Cassidy, and maybe Charlotte. This started with the introduction of yet another Jeremy, because of course we needed another one. However, this one bit the dust before the game even started, since he cut his own face off after seeing Glitchtrap and presumably getting possessed. And then he gets to Tape Girl, who we don't really have a name for. Then we come to the Pizza Party minigame where we end up getting stuffed into Freddy, who is alone on stage. But where are the other animatronics, you ask? Well, they're in the back room. Chica and Bonnie were there, except they were damaged so they weren't on stage with us. And remember, Glitchtrap has taken 2 people. If you pay attention though, you may remember the name of the kid who possessed Bonnie. Jeremy. And in this game we get another Jeremy. I mean, he cuts his face off, and yet in the Pizza Party minigame we still see Bonnie with, what's that? Oh right, a missing face. This was certainly intentional, but I thought that it meant that we were named Gabriel and that Glitchtrap was about to escape, but that turned out to not be the case. I also thought the tape girl could have been named Susie because she was Glitchtrap's other confirmed victim, and Chica was also in the back room with us during the Pizza Party minigame. Yeah. Getting close to the end, in number 3, wanted, dead or alive. Forget it. Because, yeah, you know what? This is actually a good question in this case, since I don't know if Afton is alive or dead inside of the Burn Trap suit, okay? He was alive in the Spring Trap and Scraptrap suits, as we learned from the man in room 1280, because he was possessed by the one you should not have killed. But did he finally get put down after FNAF 6, or is he still kicking? Okay, his body is still present within the Burn Trap suit, or at least it partially is. His skull is still there. So, what's the consensus here? I don't know. The existence of Glitchtrap seems to imply that he's dead in the suit, but Ultimate Custom Night suggests that the one you should not have killed is still possessing him, which would be what he sees in the recharge station, which would mean that he's alive, and not because of the recharge station, but because the one you should not have killed would still be possessing him, which they would only do if he was still alive, since if we're being honest, the only reason that Afton was possessed was so that he could suffer, so being possessed after he's dead isn't really gonna do anything for Crying Child, because that Crying Child is definitely the one you should not have killed, not Cassidy. I'm saying it, okay? It's a thing. And the one you should not have killed would not be controlling Burn Trap to take over Freddy and turn things evil. It just goes against what we know about the character. So, I don't know at this point. I feel like he's probably still alive, but like just barely. Although, that means that Glitchtrap shouldn't exist. Penultimately, in at number 2, finally dead. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things, okay? After making your way into Burn Trap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by pressing 3 buttons outside of 3 monitors to burn Burn Trap. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come for Gregory and then use the doors to temporarily lock them out, and then other things. When Burn Trap is finally burned, the blob, which was that tentacle monster thing that I was talking about, attacks him to make sure that he doesn't get away. Freddy and Gregory will then be shown escaping and sitting on a hill together. However, if the blob actually does kill William is a totally different question. There are death animations in the game files, however they aren't used in the ending, so we can't count it as canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing should have ended with this game from what we understood about the series, but he came back nonetheless, so even logical conclusions aren't going to help us. And if the blob was going to ensure William's death, it would then have to ensure its own death, so I doubt that it did it. God, just please let William finally be dead for the love of everything in life. Please. And finally, in at number 1, comes back. I think that unfortunately Afton being resurrected or returning in some form or another is inevitable. I don't get why, okay? I think at this point we can move on from this killer. We have a new one, but a load of people seem to think that we need Afton back again. I put a poll up on like the Vanny facts lists that we know during the premiere. And even though the video is about Vanny, only 51% of people thought that she was better than Glitchtrap. And I think that speaks volumes as to who the favorite in this series is. Like, I get that we've grown up with Afton as the killer, okay, but hell, we didn't even know his name until Sister Location. Until that point, we were calling him after a frickin' color, okay? We've known this man's name for like 5 games. That's literally half the series. That's half the time the series has been out. The first 4 games didn't have him, okay? He was just like, he wasn't even a character in the first game. Just a mysterious man that Matt Pat compared to Nathan Dunlap, okay? Just end him. Finally, please! The main issue I've been having is whether William is dead or alive. And there are a couple different things to consider here. Firstly, he is seemingly in a new endoskeleton, which would indicate that he's dead and Glitchtrap's consciousness is just being transferred into Burn Trap spot via the recharge station. But his head is clearly visible. Like, you can see his skull and his actual human jaw, meaning that he could still be holding on to this world via that head, especially given who we're talking about here. The most stubborn to ever grace our screens. This also can't be a new endo, and just the model that they're using for the others since it was easier and they could release the game faster. This seems to be indicated by the way that Burntrap walks. If this was a new endoskeleton, why would he be shambling like a zombie? But the claws and repaired sections to the actual endo also seem to indicate that this is also a new endo and possibly even Glamrock Bonnie's. So there's a whole lot of wrong going on here. All the points are intersecting and it's not fun. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me, but I think I might have found a way to make it work. However, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. If this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, it would need to have broader shoulders and actually be shorter. Like even scaling the Glamrock endo so that they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same and lined up, just they don't match. There are similarities, of course, between the two designs, but there aren't enough similarities where I can call this even really above 50%. There's also the issue of the muscles being woven throughout the body, or maybe those are nerve fibers. If it was just the head, I'd understand, since they could have just pulled the old endo head and put it onto the new body. Since all the parts were intertwined, Afton's head would have come with it. But with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's way too intricate to actually have been placed there. And they would only be there and not dangling if it had been stuck there after being shoved full of machine parts. I don't think that they're taking super glue to glue these fibers back onto a new endoskeleton. If Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of his body bits. It wouldn't. That's not how it works. Which would mean this would have to be Springtrap's endoskeleton, which also explains why it's so run down, why he shambles, and why he hardly has any casing. And Springtrap's design also seems to change from game to game. From FNAF 3 to FNAF 6, he was totally different, so him changing again in Security Breach seems like no big deal in comparison. It's basically normal for him to get a newer and seemingly scarier attempt at his design with a new game. And at least this has an understandable progression from the last game and even from FNAF 3, since it's more run down and not just a bigger head like Scraptrap. It's like he sold his soul for a bigger head and then the demon kind of made a joke out of it. The most reasonable assumption that I have for what happened though was that he was given the hands of Glamrock Bonnie since it has the claws and just he wasn't given the entire endoskeleton. But then again, his arms have the bits of muscle and nerve fibers as well, which means that it would have to have been his old one, it would have to have been there from the start, it would have to be the arm of the old endoskeleton, which is a whole other conundrum because Scraptrap was missing an arm and Springtrap didn't have any casing on his foot, yet here we are. I just think that we have to kind of leave this one up to artistic license and accept that it's meant to be the same endoskeleton, just with a replacement part or two from Glamrock Bonnie instead of like the entire endoskeleton. It makes sense, honestly, and it's really the only reasonable explanation that we have. Unless the colors are wrong on the images that I was looking at and the bits on the hands are just meant to be melted casing, which is possible, but I doubt it. As for if he's wanted dead or alive, I think this version of Afton is actually finally dead. And honestly, I'm happy about that because it means that even if he's still here, we can kill him off for good. This is the most logical conclusion to me because, well, other than him basically being only a head, this guy has had multiple backslides of, oh, I'm dead, just kidding. And this time around, while we instantly predicted that he had indeed survived, I think that Scott is finally flipping the narrative on us. We predicted it, so it's not gonna happen. Afton is no longer connected to his body, as we can clearly see from the formation of Glitchtrap. And Glitchtrap being created would only be possible if Afton died, since the one you should not have killed was dead set on keeping him breathing. But Burntrap, this guy doesn't even have lungs anymore. So yeah, this version of Afton's body is dead, but his consciousness lives on. Like how there's like the conspiracy that Walt Disney froze his head. Yeah, well, that's kind of what they did with Glitchtrap. And then that programming was probably uploaded into his old host, or I guess vessel, since I've been rewatching Supernatural. Basically, this guy would be impossible if he wasn't just Afton's code loaded onto an endoskeleton. Plus, the eyes are clearly robotic this time around with purple pupils, rather than the previous iterations that had seemingly real eyes, Afton's actual eyes, since it was in suit mode after he got snapped. And opening his head in those like secret FNAF 3 screens revealed that it was actually like his eyes because they were seemingly in the same place. So, all in all, here's the story of Burntrap as far as I can tell. During the FNAF 6 fire, Afton passes out. Not dead, but still somehow alive thanks to the one you should not have killed, Crying Child. This leads to the events of Ultimate Custom Night that sees Afton stuck in his own mind trying to escape so that his spirit can move on. But Crying Child, represented by a golden bear like the one who crushed his skull, tries to keep him stuck, until eventually he throws everything that he has at him. 50-20 mode. After being so weakened by the fire, William survives this attack on his mind, and Crying Child's spirit is set free, hence the spasming bear at the end of that mode. That's him burning as the fire sets his soul free. William's soul then latches onto the nearest thing that it can find, one of the hard drives in the storage room that the Scraptrap animatronic was being kept in. One that gets scanned to create the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience as the company tries to rebuild its reputation. Then, not wanting to waste the land that was bought for their company, Fazbear Entertainment begins building a new pizzaplex on top of their old location. Whether this is due to Glitchtrap possessing someone higher up at the company through the game or someone just wanting to save money is up in the air, but the remains of the FNAF 6 simulated pizzeria are buried under the pizzaplex's foundation. That's when Vanessa comes along, our player character from Help Wanted, who reassembles the 16 cassette tapes in an effort to destroy Afton once and for all, but ultimately fails. When our mind is distracted by following Tape Girl's instructions, William locks us in our mind and in the Princess Quest minigame that would later get ported to an arcade cabinet for insurance purposes. And by insurance I mean like insurance on Vanessa so that she wouldn't easily be able to escape. As Vanny, William then uses the animatronics to dig out his body and put his old endoskeleton in a recharge station so that when he's able to transfer himself back into it, he'll be able to move. After all, at this point, he's not a spirit, but simply coding, which means that in another game, if he is still alive, we'll actually be able to kill him off. He also gives his old suit some upgrades in the form of Glamrock Bonnie's hands and right foot. Why would he not go with a new, more powerful endo, you ask? Because it's William and his Spring Bonnie suit. It's his body in there. Of course he'd want it back. He's been that way for like at least 40 years at this point. It's all he knows. Then as Gregory and Freddy jump down into the pit, William can sense it. Either because he's an animatronic, because one or both of them are meant to be his kids, or something else, he activates his body even though it's not fully charged and tries to take over Freddy. He's not fully charged, hence the shambling, which Gregory ends up preventing with fire, which has surely traumatized Afton by now, and considering how he's only code, this time fire would actually finish the job. Eventually, the place actually catches on fire and Freddy and Gregory escape, but the blob grabs hold of William. Whether it was to save him or seal his fate is unknown, but this almost certainly isn't the end of William Afton's story.